Mike, welcome to Built Different. It's great to sit down with you.
Thanks, Alec. Appreciate it. Really excited to be here, man.
Yeah, so we've met at the 518 Kettlebell Club, and you're
Yes.
the second person I've interviewed. Shout out to Richard Mack,
Okay.
who we've had the chance to work out together a
hmm
lot. I love the environment of working out at her strength to get closer with certain guys within the fitness industry. It's just something about
No
that
doubt,
always
yeah.
makes me
And
smile.
and shout out Nora for
Oh
the work
yeah,
that she's doing over there. And yeah, I've known Nora for a period of time now, but got to know her more from the Kettlebell Club she puts on that Sunday. So it's been a blast.
yeah. Nora's the best, and excited to hopefully have her as a guest in the future. But I
Yeah.
wanted to really sit down with you to learn more about your story. And I love asking the question to start out, really, where were you born and where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Niskuna, New York, so not too far from where we are now. My parents they grew up in Queens. They're city kids, and then didn't want to raise a family in the city, so they came upstate from some opportunities for my dad. My dad was a dentist. He had his own practice growing up. They lived in. My sister was born in St. Louis because my dad went to dental school out there, and then they wanted to come back to the Northeast and eventually landed on Rotterdam, kind of Schenectady area, till eventually moved to Niskuna. And that's where I grew up and spent most of my time up to about 18.
Okay, so you grew up in Niskayuna.
Mhm.
What happened after high school?
So after high school, I went to college in Plattsburgh for about a second and a half. I was one of those kids. I was not ready to go away and be on my own in college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Kind of skated through high school in many ways. I was more interested in hanging out with friends and partying at that time, but you kind of just went to college because that's what you're supposed to do. But did not do very well there. So I went for like a semester, then eventually moved back home, and kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Was kind of working in the restaurant business for a bit, and then I had this just kind of idea to move with a friend to Boston. And I moved to Boston when I was like 19, 20 years old. And it was a really cool move for me at that time because it was the first time I kind of learned how to be on my own a little bit more and have some bills, and be a little bit more autonomous. And it was at that time when I really fell in love with like fitness and physical health. I had this pipe dream of still thinking I could play professional baseball at some point. And, at that point, I knew I needed to get in like really good shape. So during that time, I joined a gym. I got my first personal trainer and was beating the crap out of myself, at the gym, but felt the benefits of it, like saw my body changing, saw the strength that was really building up. And I was like, oh, there's something kind of cool to this. And it was the first time that I was kind of doing something for myself. And so from there, went from Boston, moved to Florida for like a short period of time. Eventually, when that didn't work out, moved back up north and was living in Niskuna till eventually kind of started my career in fitness and personal training in 2008 in Clifton Park, and then stayed around that area till eventually some more changes, moved up to Saratoga Springs, which is where I live now, and where I work and build my business.
Gotcha. So I want to go back to growing up as a kid. So you mentioned growing up in Niskayuna. You talked about eventually moving and working to become a baseball player, pursuing the pipe dream of professional baseball. Did you grow up like when you were younger as a baseball player, or did you play any other sports?
Yeah, I always say, like, as most coaches and kind of trainers that were in the area, grew up as an athletic, kid. My dad was a great athlete. My dad was a great basketball player, and my sister's a fantastic athlete. She was a college player of the year in softball. So grew up playing baseball and basketball mostly. Played tennis. I was always a good athlete in like any sport. I could kind of hold my own, but I was never like the best. Like I was never the best one on the team. So I knew early on that practice was really important, because if I wanted to like make a contribution in games or really be effective, like I couldn't just rely on my general athletic ability. I was a husky kid. I don't know if we even use that word anymore, but I was an overweight kid growing up, and had to figure out how to, be the best that I could in athletics. So I kind of had an early, um, reverence for practice. I knew that was the place where you go to get better, which kind of turned into when I went to the gym setting and went to kind of personal training. I already kind of had affinity for that type of work.
Yeah, so you mentioned that your dad was an athlete, your sister was an athlete. What influence did they have on you just growing up in a family that physical fitness, being athletic, obviously seemed to be prioritized?
It's a good question. Health was always an interesting thing. So back it all the way up, when I was 3 years old, I was diagnosed with leukemia. So I had cancer early on. So health was always something that was kind of not maybe always talked about, but very much as a foundation of what we were aiming for, in life. As far as nutrition, just kind of overall health. My dad was a dentist, so he was kind of in the medical field and health field. My dad played basketball like 4 or 5 times a week. Like that's how he stayed in shape. Playing pickup basketball, playing in leagues all the time. And yeah, it was always kind of just a part of what we did, growing up. Like my sister now she's like one of my best friends in the world. I love her to death. And seeing her be such a great athlete was always kind of an influence on me and impactful. Probably not like when I was young and recognizing it, but in retrospect, it was always something that I thought was really powerful.
Yeah, so 3 years old, being diagnosed with childhood leukemia. I want to unpack that because that is so intense to have to deal with that at such a young age. Do you really remember much of that early experience, just given how young you were when you went through that diagnosis?
Personally, I don't as much. I mean, 3 years old. I mean, I remember snippets of it and kind of snapshots in my memory. But it was kind of, going to Albany Med and, getting, treatment and checkups and stuff. That was just kind of what I thought life was at that time. Much different experience for my parents. And, being an adult now and talking to them about that, I've learned a lot more about that time. But I did also. I think it probably impacted me more of how deeply I value connection and kind of interpersonal relationships and talking to people in conversation, because I had some amazing doctors and nurses. Like always felt like I was just cared for and taken care of, like some amazing nurses from that time of growing up. But it's hard. Like at that time, I didn't really know the seriousness of it at that time. But I mean, we're talking about 1987, so things were very different. I mean, things were pretty dicey. I mean, I think it was like a coin flip of, mortality at that time of going in. Fortunately, I had a great pediatrician that saw it early on and told my parents when they were bringing me in, like, hey, I don't think this is just the normal stuff. You should probably go take him to, see what's up. And obviously did the testing and, told my parents about it. But I learned a lot about like strength and resilience from that time from both of my parents. My mom was so like wasn't really emotional about it. Was more like, okay, like this is what we're dealing with. Like, what do we have to do? And it actually really kind of brought my parents and brought my family closer together at that time, which I think is very interesting because young, childhood cancer or health issues often splits people apart. There's a lot of divorce and a lot of separation that comes from that. I was one of the fortunate ones that I think it grew my parents even closer together at that time because they went through, some shitty situation like that.
Yeah, and you talked about how that experience probably influenced you to really value community that much more.
Yeah.
And I often think of success being born out of struggle.
Mhm.
A lot of people I meet, even in their 20s and 30s, sometimes have never really had something that bad happen to them.
100.
And you going through an experience of childhood leukemia as a 3-year-old, and how long really was that journey until you came out on the other side of it?
So I was under treatment for, I believe, 3 years.
Okay.
And I don't know the details of it. I mean, I remember we were at Albany Med a lot. I mean, it was, was in there for probably a period of time. I have, a scar right on my chest from where they put an intravenous line in there for me to get treatment directly, into my bloodstream from there. But it was it was at 3 years when they finally took that line out, and when I was like in remission from that time. So it was still a lot of checkups, pretty much all the way through adolescence, and probably up until I was like 18 years old. I was still seeing a pediatric oncologist for just checkups till finally eventually, I think I read something maybe 10 years ago that kids from my generation that went through this were at no more risk of anything coming back or anything than anybody else at times. So I would say it's fully, free from that realm now.
Yeah, well, I'm obviously thankful that you're here and be able to share your story. And it makes me think that you must have such a benefit of being able, I would think, to be more empathetic with people who've gone through different types of struggle, just given that, battle that you faced so early on in your life.
I would think so. Looking at it from like an intellectual or diagnosis way, I don't know. Like, I mean, anything from when you're early on, whatever you're exposed to probably shapes, how you view relationships and connection. I knew early on that I wanted to work with people. I was more of a people person. I wasn't a thing person as far as like technology or like understanding those things. I always really enjoyed connecting with people. And I think from that early time, I was very comfortable always talking with adults, talking with elders. Like even when I was like 10, 11 years old, I'd have no problem sitting at the adult table and, talking to them about real things and stuff like that, which has shaped a lot of, what I do now, from coaching and working with people to the own podcast that I host and interviewing people as well.
Yeah, similar vibes there for me as a kid too. I think I was kind of an older man vibe within like a 10, 11-year-old body.
I've been told I had an old
too.
soul forever. I'm probably very similar to you.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to go now back to, you talked about college and feeling like you were sort of maybe were spinning your wheels a little bit, kind of going because you thought you had to, and experience at Plattsburgh didn't quite work out. And then you come back home for a little bit, and then you move to the Boston area?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where in the Boston area were you?
Alston, Brighton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know that area well. I went to college on the North Shore of Mass, so I spent a lot of time out in that area.
Fun area.
Yeah.
Fun time. Yeah. It's my friend was going there to pursue college at Emerson.
Okay.
And I was just kind of in just one of those kind of like a purgatory type feel, like wasn't really knowing what I wanted to do. Just kind of felt like I needed a change of scenery at that time. So I just went and I worked. A bunch of my friends went to school out there, and I just kind of worked, and then eventually found kind of an idea of like health and fitness and, kind of just more self-care. Like I was like, well, if I don't know exactly what I want to do, might as well try and take care of myself, and do the best that I could there.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you that. Was that really the light bulb kind of going off for you, or maybe a gradual light dimmer switch in your mind going up, thinking, oh, wow, like I enjoy this. I enjoy the process of taking care of myself. Perhaps this is what I can do and help other people to fall in love with this process themselves.
It probably created a little spark,
Okay.
but it didn't really turn into a fire until a few years later. So at that time, after I moved to Florida and then I moved back home, was kind of almost took a step backwards of like kind of in that rut. I was working at some restaurants. I worked at the Cheesecake Factory. I was I think, third person hired at the Cheesecake Factory at Colony Center Mall here because it like just opened up. And during that time, a friend of mine who was one of those original servers over there was a personal trainer at this gym in Clifton Park. And I was just looking to kind of get back in shape. I was in good shape before when I was in Boston, kind of let myself go at that time and just asked him, hey, could I meet up with you and, have a consultation? And went in just thinking I was going to get back into my old routines. And he was the first person that introduced me to the FMS system, which is called Functional Movement Systems. That was by guys like Gray Cook and Lee Burton and Brett Jones, which was a different type of they were kind of at the beginning of this term functional training that we hear as buzzwords all the time. They were kind of the grassroots of that. And he put me through an assessment there, assessing my asymmetries and my, compensations and movement and all. So back up a little bit, when I was 14 years old, I had a major injury to my hip. My femur slipped out of the growth plate. It's called a slipped epiphysis. And it happens sometimes from, it might have been chemotherapy early on that made my bones a little bit more brittle, or it could just be a genetic thing. But essentially, where your femur is supposed to fit into your growth plate, mine was outside of it. And it felt like a bad groin pull, like it just pulled a muscle. So I was going through basketball season when I was 14, and it wasn't getting better till eventually my parents took me to an orthopedist because it wasn't getting better. And he saw it immediately and is like, okay, we need to bring you in today to have surgery and put a 6-inch pin in your hip. And you're going to be off your feet for a year. So that was a big change at 14 years old, because my whole identity, my whole friend group was all in athletics. So now they all kept going on and moving on to athletics, and I was really sidelined for a year. So high school was a very interesting time for me. I was much more of a loner for a few years because I really didn't get back into athletics or sports until later when I moved to Boston and got back into fitness. But what that assessment taught me was I had so many compensations and imbalances in my movement that I wasn't aware of from this previous injury from 5, 6 years earlier. So he taught me a lot of like corrective exercises and kind of putting my body back into balance. And I felt like unbelievable. And what was so cool about it, Alec, is I didn't realize I didn't feel incredible until I felt incredible. So when he actually put me through a lot of that different type of training that I wasn't used to before, my strength, my energy, like everything felt so much better. So that really kind of got my interest into the capabilities of the human body and like what training was really about. And that's when I was looking at anatomy and physiology. I was looking at some of these top trainers who work with pro athletes. Like, what are they doing different than what was the stuff I was looking for just aesthetics? Like, I wanted to look good when I was 20 years old, but to really actually see what the human body was capable of, that piqued my interest. So about a year or so down the line, my friend who was my trainer became a manager of that club and was recruiting new trainers. And he was like, hey, did you ever think about personal training? Like, I think you'd be good at it. And I'm like, well, what is it? Like, like, what do you actually do? Like, how does it work? And he introduced me to like some certification programs and stuff. And I was like, well, might as well give this a go. I think I might be good at it. And as soon as I got into the job, I got a job at that gym and I instantly fell in love with it. I built a client book up. I was working the front desk. I was there 15 hours a day. Like, I'm like, I found my niche. So that was kind of really what stemmed me to knowing, oh, this is something that not only do I love, but I'm also really good at. And I think I found what I want to do with my life.
I think about my own fitness journey as you're talking, and the movement screening piece was huge for me, both in early sessions before I ever really transitioned into group fitness, which I love. I really had to get comfortable in myself and just the basic movement patterns. And I found that a movement assessment was such an essential tool for me to understand how I moved. And to your point of not knowing how incredible it felt to understand, okay, I'm addressing my imbalances or whatever you want to call it for word choice. So many people, I think, have such a frustrating fitness environment because they're never really addressing the foundational issues with understanding how their body moves.
Yeah.
So in your work at one-on-one with folks, what has that been like for you to help people unlock just the basic understandings of why they might struggle with certain types of movements?
It's been a journey. It's 17 years down the line now of working with individuals. So, everybody's journey and really their mindset around health is so different. That's why it's so fun to have conversation with new people, because I always think it's interesting, no matter how seasoned you are or how much experience you have, the new person that's sitting in front of you that you're working with is a brand new person. Like, they don't know anything about what you've done. They have their own stories about it. But I think what happens so much in the fitness industry is we overcomplicate it so much and we focus so much on the micro details and kind of lose a lot of the simplicity and the macro things of what really works so well. So from a movement capacity is we move in 7 different movement patterns, right? It's like, we do a squat, we have a single leg stance, like we have mobility work, we have stability. And if you don't get a basis of just knowing where you're at, you really don't know where where you need to go. And I think we focus so much on where we want to go, where we don't actually take a lot of that time of figuring out exactly where we are in the moment. It's kind of like a GPS system. I tell my clients all the time, like, a GPS is great, but if you don't tell them exactly where you are, it's a useless tool, right? It's not going to tell you how to get to where you want to go if it doesn't know where you're starting from. So I think that's what I found of doing consultation and just some assessment work with people is it just it alleviates that confusion of where am I starting from, and actually just gives some clarity of, oh, okay, this is where I'm at right now. We don't get anxious often because of things that we know. Often we get anxious about things because it's the unknown. We don't know where we're starting from. And I think if you just do something like a quick assessment or even just a quick conversation with somebody and figure out exactly where they're starting from, you see their shoulders drop down, you see their breath start to just calm a little bit more. That's a really powerful feeling. And I think if you're going to start on a journey of anything, just get some clarity of exactly where you are first. Then you know what the steps you need to take going forward.
Yeah, so thinking about where you are now in your own fitness journey, I know you obviously love to incorporate things like kettlebells into your training. What specifically about kettlebells really appeals to you? Because I feel like it's one of those things that some people have experience with them. I
Mhm.
mean, I use them at Metabolic. We use them at 518 Kettlebell Club together, obviously. But generally, they're not used in every major fitness environment. So
Mhm.
what about them specifically really appeals to you for your own training?
So, in a few different ways, early on, I just thought the tool was really interesting. It's very versatile, so you can do a lot in a short period of time. I've thought about this answer a lot over the years because it's something I still pursue. I've been taught by the best of the best in the world in kettlebells, from Pavel Tsatsouline to Brett Jones to Dave Whitley. I mean, all the main people that have really popularized the work of Russian kettlebells, I've known very personally and learned from. What it helped me realize is strength is a skill and fitness is a skill. And we don't talk about it as a skill set. We don't think often that health and fitness is something that you can get better at. It's just something that we often think that either this person has it or they don't. But I view it as it's a skill set just like anything. And I learned this a lot from being a baseball player and always loving baseball. I was always fascinated by the details of baseball. Like when you go in, like changing where your elbow is or like where you shift your weight, how you drive through the ball. It's such a difference where if you hit the ball square, it's a home run. If you miss it by just like a millimeter, it's a pop fly. I was always fascinated by the details of getting better at the movement and owning those movements. And what you see from the best of the best in something like that, they're working on their swing over and over again. They're not doing variety, right? They're not like once in a while, oh, now I'm going to play football for a bit or going to play bit. No, they're committed to baseball and they're working on their swing every day. Kettlebells to me gave me the opportunity to do that. And I saw kind of a comparison with that, where working on something that I could get better at, like a kettlebell swing or a kettlebell snatch or, a clean, like working on these few movements, but trying to do them to a masterful level was something that was really appealing to me. So, like when I went into the RKC certification in 2010, that was the first time that I, got into this world of hardstyle kettlebell training. They teach 6 movements in 3 days. Like it's not a lot of stuff, but it's an inch wide and a mile deep. Like they go so deep into all the details of doing a kettlebell swing. Now, I can teach somebody to do a kettlebell swing in 10 minutes. Like it's not a hard thing to understand and get 80% of the way or 85% of the way there. But from doing it, like the difference of working with different bell sizes or intensity or volume, like the details of getting a little bit better or tweaking something a little bit here or there, and oh, that feels better versus that. That was always so fascinating to me. And it gave me an opportunity to that cliche term of 1% better every day that we're all trying to do. Kettlebells provided me the avenue from the physical standpoint to get there. And from working with people now with them exclusively for the last 15 years or so, I've seen a lot of people do the same thing there. So it cleared a lot of the clutter and the confusion about what's the optimal way or best way to approach fitness and gave them more of a simple path to focus on. So that's really was, what I found from it.
I wanted to unpack something you talked about, which I lit up for me. Health and fitness is a skill.
Yeah.
So when you approach your clients who may have a mindset challenge of approaching their own training or getting over a type of hump, I often think of training in the same ways as I would as a performer. You talked about comparing it to being a baseball player. I compare it a lot to being an actor or a
Mhm.
singer or a dancer, a performer, learning choreography. There's just movement and connecting your body with performance.
Mhm.
When you have people who feel stuck in thinking, oh, that person's healthy or that person's more fit and I can't get to that level, how do you work with people to view it as a skill that they actually can develop?
Yeah, so depending on where people are starting from, it's like, the first thing that we need to do is develop some structure, right? It's like, first of just getting down some structure and getting some consistency down is the number one thing. And I think that is the main thing that is where most people get stuck. It's not at the beginning, it's usually somewhere in the middle. So this is something I've talked about before on podcasts of kind of my gripe with a lot of mainstream fitness is everything is geared towards the person who's just getting started. We market to that. It's couch to 5K programs. It's 6-week challenges. It's 30 days. It's 75 hard. It's like do something that's out of the realm of what you're doing for a short period of time to work for a change, right? The problem is anybody can really do that. If you are desperate enough to make a change, you can will yourself and motivate yourself to make a short-term change at any given time. That's not where most people fall off. It's usually somewhere in in like the middle stage. I call it the advanced beginner stage, where most people do very well for 6 weeks or even 6 months or so. 95% of people, whether it's weight loss, whether it's habit changing, fall off or go back to old habits 1 to 3 years after that time. So it's not the beginning stages. We're very good at starting stuff. It's that it's that Kansas road where nothing's really going on at all, right? It's like it's the middle of the country where nothing's really happening. And it feels like nothing's really going on at that time because the nuance of like the beginning progress and the beginning changes starts to fade away, and that's when the consistency like starts to fall off a little bit because it just doesn't feel the same way. So where I talk to a lot of people now is like in that beginning stage as a coach, sometimes it's just to step back and let them go through like that stage of like be a little bit more creative, be a little bit more intuitive in your training or so, and get through those tough seasons. But if you get through those tough seasons and you get out on the other end, then you've really built more of the habit of consistency. And what I found was a lot of the people that I saw specifically in the kettlebell world that really intrigued me is some people who were doing the simplest workouts. Like they're not doing changing things up all the time. They're not jumping all around trying to just chase a high or chase soreness or chase an intensity. They're doing very light workouts on some days. They're pushing other ones, and they're some of the strongest MFers that you've ever seen in your life. And I'm like, these people are doing something right. Like they are incredibly fit. They're also incredibly like happy and like joyful in their program. Like there was like all these different things that you would just see from them as instructors that I would see. I was like, wow, they seem like they've really got it together. Like, what are they doing? And I found that they were just following simple steps all the time and just trying to do it to a masterful level.
Yeah, the mental discipline of consistency, it's not sexy, but it's so sustainable when you can fall in love with it. I love to tell myself that 365 consistent beats the shit out of 75 hard. And I
100.
love telling people that
Yeah.
because really, if you think about the whole year, if you can even work out consistently 3 to 4 days a week, you don't have to be a madman and do 6, 7 days of something. You could just focus on being consistent over a longer period of time.
Mhm.
And generally speaking, you're gonna have much better results. To your point of kind of the fitness industry, kind of catering to newer people or those kind of short term thinking. How for you, given your journey, how have you personally worked to continue to be as disciplined as you are with your own routine?
It's ingrained over a lot of years of reps. Um, you know, Personally, like I love testing my body and like feeling good in my energy and my routine. I've tried a lot of different routines in the past before. But being strong and feeling strong in there, it connects with everything else that I'm aiming to do in my life, whether it's my relationship, whether it's in my business that I'm trying to grow and build up. Like the more that I stay focused and strong in my routine of physical fitness, it helps with everything else that I do. This is why, my one podcast, I call it the strength connection. It's because I think all different areas of strength, they're all connected together. And I think a lot of times we don't recognize the strengths that we have in certain areas of our life, and we only focus on the things that we're lacking, right? So if you're trying to build a business, or if you're in a new relationship and you say, oh, I'm not good at relationships or so, it's like, well, what are you really good at? What are you really strong at? I know, like, I'm very disciplined and I'm very strong in maintaining my physical health. Well, I broke that down. Well, why is that? Like, why? Well, when I feel confident in my skin, I feel like I look good. I present myself in a better way. When I'm not feeling my best, like, I still go in and I get my training done. Why do I do it at that point? Well, it's really valuable to me. Okay. How can I apply that strength and something that I've got down into other areas of my life? Because I've shown it here. Can I circumvent that or bring that over into other areas? So it's really been a vessel to me to really help me in other areas of my life develop skill. As I talked about with strength as a skill, I kind of view everything that we do for growth or just evolution in our life as a skill. You can get better at being a good boyfriend or a good girlfriend or a husband or wife. You can get better at being a business owner or a manager or an employee. You can get better at being a good friend. Everything is a skill set there, but it's, figuring out, like, how can you operationalize that? How can you work on putting specific practices in there? And it doesn't mean that it always needs to be pedal to the metal, right? Pavel Tatsulin has a great quote on strength. He said, amateurs are the only ones that know one speed, and that's pedal to the metal. It's like the best of the best in strength know the value of light days and medium days and heavy days, and they use them all accordingly.
I love all of that and couldn't agree with you more across the board there with what you just laid out. And again, I think of my girlfriend right now because we met at the gym and she's battling an injury that she's recovering from, which has really sidelined her and limited her ability to work out the way that she loves. And we've talked about that. And I hope she doesn't get upset with me for bringing this up, but I think it's important because you talked about being sidelined from an injury and feeling like your friends sort of move past you a little bit in athletics. And I think for so many people, that's such an interesting point in their fitness journey where they fall in love with a community, they fall in love with the structure in the routine, and then all of a sudden something unexpected happens to them.
Mhm.
And I've met so many people, not just my girlfriend, but like plenty of people who really have struggled and gone through the ups and downs physically, mentally, emotionally with recovering from an
Mhm.
injury. Because to your point, that fitness foundation really does give you the juice across the board to approach your professional life more confidently, your relationships more confidently. So I think for a lot of people, once they discover that and then it's suddenly taken away from them, it really feels like an identity crisis for a while
Mhm.
of where do I find that stability? So for you and working with clients, how have you approached that either for yourself, if you've ever battled through a major injury in recent years, or for some of your clients who have been dealing with injuries?
It's a great question. We think of setbacks as something abnormal. Setbacks are just as much a part of life as everything else. So, the first thing to look at is that it's not something that is out of the norm. Maybe it's not something that we wished for, but it's part of the process. And I tell clients that all the time. And we have a program that I do with my clientele. I call it scouting the defense. So let me unpack this a little bit for you. So this is something I came up with a few years ago that's been really powerful for me, as well as the work that I've done with people, is all the things that we talk about adding into our life. Think of it like an offensive game plan. We're doing a workout plan. We're going to, like, our gym or our group fitness. We put in a nutrition, plan. We have a mental practice, like whatever it is that we're working on. It's all offensive game plan. That's when we have the ball in our hands and we're going downfield in order to score a touchdown, right? when you're at the beginning level, right? Think of it like if you're like a young kid and you're really athletic, right? If the most athletic kids just dominate, right? Like they don't need to have a lot of scheme or a lot of like strategy or a lot of plan out there. They're just better than everybody else. But then eventually you play high school, and then maybe you play college, and then all of a sudden you're really good and you get to the pros, right? And you're the quarterback. Well, the defense in the pros gets paid really well too. They're just as good at their job of trying to prevent you from moving the ball downfield as you are trying to move the ball downfield. So I say life plays a professional defense. Okay. It's not enough just to focus on the offensive game plan that we have. You also need to know what are the things in life that could possibly try and throw a curveball at you or try and prevent you from doing the work that you want to do. Tom Brady was known as being the greatest quarterback in the world, right? Not because he was the most athletic or he had the best arm or he was great. Everybody says he knew the defense better than the defense knew the defense. He knew what was going on in the game as much as possible. So if you see what could happen ahead of time from there, even just a split second faster, it turns a reactive situation into a proactive situation. And I've thought about this a lot, Alec. I think the more that we focus on being that 1% better, or when we really have a handle on what we're aiming for in our life, it's taking all the things that we normally react to and turn them into just a little bit of a proactive situation. So I tell clients before, hey, injuries might pop up. You're going to have days that you're not going to want to do what we need to do. Let's not pretend that like now that you signed up for this program, everything's going to be great and you're going to wake up every day and the birds are going to be singing and it's going to be sunny and you're going to hit every green light on the way to work on the next day. Because if you think of that and you think that everything's going to stay in that like honeymoon phase, right? Then as soon as something is off from that, you think that it's abnormal and something's wrong. Okay. I just did this with a client the other day as they want to start working out early in the morning because they have a busy schedule. They have a family and they were trying to do it like during work, but things got really busy going after work. It's too easy for them to put it off from a family standpoint. So it's like, I want to try and get up in the morning. I'm going to wake up at 5:30 in the morning. I'm going to get this done. And it's like, okay, what's the first thing that is going to happen when you wake up in the morning? And they were saying like, well, I'm going to get up. I'm going to, drink my electrolyte. I'm like, no. I'm like, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to wake up and you're going to probably feel tired, right? It's like, you're not going to want to do it the first thing that you do. So what are you going to say to yourself? What's one thing that you can do when inevitably you're going to feel tired in the morning? Maybe it's just put your feet down on the floor, right? No more than that. Just kind of change the pattern, interrupt. So when they did that, it's like, okay, they woke up. All right, I knew I was going to be tired and I didn't want to do this. Okay, but I know I'm going to put my feet down on the floor. All right, it's just enough of turning a situation that normally you would maybe react to and turn over and hit the snooze button to, okay, I knew this was going to happen. What was the one thing I said I'm going to do? And then that eventually just got them into the stage where, all right, now I can do the things that I need to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I think a lot of what you're saying in terms of the political communication and background I have in terms of reacting versus responding. And you talked about kind of proactive reactions to certain things, but in crisis communications, so many people are conditioned to just react to something rather than take a step back and actually think, well, okay, let me breathe for a moment. How am I going to respond in a certain situation? I think half the time with modern politics, I always coach candidates or elected officials being like, before you just tweet something or you just have your staffer tell you what they think you should do, take a minute and ask yourself, what would you do as a human being? You hear a piece of information, breathe, process it. What would you do? What would you actually say? 90% of the time, that's actually going to be the right thing to say, as long as you are somewhat of a normal person and connected to like how everyday people actually think and feel about things. Yeah. So I think sometimes too, people just need to lower the stakes with their own kind of situation. But that goes back to playing the long game with consistency. So you have a lot of projects though, thinking about like just being consistent in how you want to create community and stories yourself. You have the Connection podcast. You also have the Inspire Saratoga podcast. Now, I'm curious, just what made you want to focus so specifically on the Saratoga community and telling stories of people within that community?
So I about a year ago, I was I was talking with a good friend of mine who's my business coach and has really helped me a lot in the work. And I fell in love with podcasting about four or so years ago. Me and my former partner, we started one during the pandemic, as a million people did, just out of boredom and also just like wanting to, just to connect more,
Yeah.
out. And when I started my own business, Breakthrough Secrets, about 4 years ago now, I was trying to figure out what was the message that I wanted to give out. Where did I really feel alive? And that's when I started the Strength Connection podcast that I host solo. Connecting with people in strength, thought leaders, mindset leaders, and just hearing their stories and their insights. And I just found the power of storytelling and conversation is I got so much from learning from other people, from just talking and just picking their brain. And what I wanted to do is really get back into just the local community area. And I was like, so much of what we see now, specifically with media and with shows and entertainment, it's all like people out there. It's like people who like have huge platforms that are, we're seeing things all over the world, but we don't talk as much about like what's going on in our local community. Like there's some really cool people that might be doing some good stuff going on in your own area. So that's why I wanted to create the show Inspire Saratoga. I didn't know what I was going to call it. I was just coming around, but I knew I wanted to do more of a local show to connect with people who I thought were just aiming up in their lives, whether they had a story of resilience, whether they were building a nonprofit, whether they were, they were a teacher or an educator, just people that I called like unsung heroes that maybe I wanted more people to know that there's really cool and inspiring people that are doing stuff in the area. And I was on a walk one day and I was just like came up with Inspire Saratoga. I'm like, I'm just going to call it that. I just wanted to bring more inspiration to the area because as so much of what we see, it's so easy to fall down the negative trap and just hear all of the negative things that are going on all the time over, in the world, not realizing that, you might have a neighbor or somebody that's close to your area that's doing something really cool, and that might just make you feel a little bit more like, yeah, I'm not alone in the things that I'm working on. This person overcame, some resilience and, had some stuff. Oh, I'm going through that too. And we hear those stories all the time of a bunch of different people all over the world. But sometimes you forget that there might be somebody right down the street from you in your own neighborhood that's going through a lot of the same shit that you're going through. Maybe that's an opportunity that you can connect and just be a little bit closer into your community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think for me, fitness community has become such an instrumental part of my life across the capital region and beyond. And when you think of community more broadly, I'm sure you've seen some of the same sociological studies that I've looked at that have really suggested that more and more people are losing connection
Mhm.
and people feel like they have fewer and fewer friends. People are not going out to hang out with people as much as they used to. Some of that is a reality of economic pressure. It
Mhm.
seems to cost $100 now just to leave your house.
100, yeah.
But in reality, it's so important to have that type of human connection. We know that connection and community is one of the biggest indicators for longevity.
Mhm.
So to your point, like what have you seen to your, I guess, encouragement of the work that you've been able to do so far with highlighting people in the Saratoga community? What have you seen really, what have you gotten out of it? What are the benefits you've seen for yourself and the work you've been able to do through it?
The biggest thing that I've seen that has really hammered down into my foundation is we're a lot more similar than we are different. Just as human beings, right? We're all trying to aim up and do the best that we can in our lives, and we all have different modalities or different avenues of what we're trying to to work with in there, but we're all trying to really accomplish the same thing in a macro level, right? We want to be joyful. We all want to grow, and we all want to enjoy that process of growth. And I think to do that is everybody has a story and everybody's going through a lot of different things. And the more that you hear people's stories, that you can take other people's stories and you can gain some inspiration, from them in your own life. And you can learn from everybody that you said. I mean, I think it was maybe Thoreau, like I forget, it was a famous quote about like every person that I talk to can teach me something. And that's what I've learned so much from the Inspire Saratoga, podcast. Because the strength connection, I've get so much from that too. But it was for a long time a lot of people that were in a very similar avenue of me, like coaching, mindset practice, like personal development, like all that work. I've had some people on Inspire Saratoga that I know nothing about, like the work, like the work that they do. Like I had Jen Branco on recently, who runs a clothing boutique, but it's all from ethical goods, because she read this book about how fast fashion is one of the worst things for the environment in the world. She taught me all about the world of the fashion industry and how she built this business up from scratch and all the things that they went through from there. I had Megan Connolly helped, who started Inclusive Saratoga, which is all about helping businesses and nonprofits be more open for people with disabilities. And not just from a inclusive, like bring everybody together, but actually from a profiteering aspect of that. So I've learned so much about different ventures and different things that people are doing in the area that you don't hear on platforms all the time or on a million different interviews. But what you realize is that everybody's waking up trying to do the best that they possibly can. And I think that the more that you can connect with others and hear that and hear inspiring messages, it's going to benefit you more. And as I said, it's so easy to go down the negative frame and the negative mindset. And one of the ways to operationalize that and stay into a positive zone is to be around good people. And talking about like mental performance and actually coaching mindset, and that was one of the things people ask me, how do you be in a good mindset, or how do you develop a good mindset? I think one of the best ways to do that quickly is be around people that are in a good mindset. Talk to other people about it. It's not some crazy, like out there ethereal thing that you need to meditate for a certain amount of time during the day, or do your breathwork challenge and then drink your electrolytes and then journal for an hour and stuff like that. All those things have, some merit and some value to it. But I think the best way to do it is just connect with people. And I found a way to do it in a business setting, so I kind of have to do it in a way too. But it's benefited me so much in my own just mental state and a way that I can help people.
Yeah, again, I could echo everything you've just said. And I just want to thank you so much for joining me today and sharing so much of your story and your mindset and your mission, your approach to fitness, your life as a whole, and to the kind of points you just outlined. I hope that people who are looking for more positive influences in their life, for those of you who had the chance to listen to this full podcast, thank you. I hope that this conversation can be a good influence for you. And I'm just so thankful again to sit down with you, and excited to also be on your podcast in the near future, and to keep talking about good things and hopefully promoting good things that are happening here in the community.
Thank you very much, Alec. I really appreciate it. And I've followed all the work that you've been doing on your own personal journey, for years, and being able to connect with you from our time with Nora to now coming in and being able to sit down one-on-one with you is a true blessing. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.